It was a Christmas Eve unlike any other. The air outside was cold, with a light dusting of snow covering the ground, creating the illusion of a peaceful winter wonderland. Yet inside, the warmth and joy that usually filled our home on Christmas were absent. The house felt hollow, as though something was missing. The Christmas tree stood tall in the corner of the living room, its lights twinkling in a quiet display of holiday cheer. But it didn't have the same magic this year. The usual festive laughter that filled our home had been replaced by an eerie silence. I had spent the past few weeks watching my daughter, Emily, become more withdrawn. I knew that she was taking care of her mother-in-law, who had been ill. But there was something about the way she acted that didn't sit right with me. She wasn't the same daughter I had raised. The small conversations we had seemed forced, like she was always distracted. When I asked her about how she was managing everything, she would smile softly and assure me that she was okay, that everything was fine, and that her mother-in-law just needed a little more attention. But I could see through the smile. She was wearing herself thin, and it worried me. I had always been close to Emily. We shared so many memories, Christmases, birthdays, school events, family trips. We'd always been a team, my daughter and I, and it hurt to see her distancing herself. I had hoped that with the holidays approaching, she would come back to me, to the family, and we'd be able to spend time together as we always did. But deep down, I knew something was different this year. When Emily told me that she needed to leave on Christmas Eve to spend more time with her mother-in-law, I tried to be understanding. "She's sick, Mom," Emily had said, her voice softer than usual. "I can't leave her right now. I promised David I'd help." I felt the weight of her words and the finality in them. She wasn't asking for my permission. She was simply telling me what she had decided. There was no room for me in that decision, and I felt the sting of it. "Of course, Emily," I had replied, trying to hide the hurt behind my words. "I understand. You need to be there for her. I'll be fine." But as she grabbed her coat and scarf, ready to leave, I felt a lump form in my throat. It wasn't just the fact that she was leaving, it was the way she was leaving. There was no offer to make it up to me later, no promise to spend time together, when things settled down. It felt like she had made a choice that didn't involve me. I watched her walk out the door, a cold gust of wind following her into the house as she disappeared into the night. The house felt empty without her. The silence grew heavier. I stared at the Christmas tree, feeling the weight of the holiday season bear down on me. This was supposed to be a time of joy, of family togetherness, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Emily had been the center of so many of our family's Christmases, and now she was gone, leaving me behind in the quiet house. It wasn't just her absence that hurt. It was the way she had dismissed the importance of being together. I tried to distract myself by preparing dinner for one, but nothing tasted right. The food felt bland, the flavors muted. I tried calling Emily, but she didn't answer. I left a message, but there was no return call. I sent her a text, wishing her a Merry Christmas and telling her I loved her, but still, there was no reply. As I sat in the silence, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of loss. Emily had been my rock for so long, and now it felt like she was slipping away from me. The holidays felt like a cruel reminder of how much things had changed. I had hoped that the Christmas spirit would bring us closer, but instead, it seemed to highlight the distance between us. I missed her laughter, her excitement, her energy. And yet, all I was left with was the echo of her absence. Hours passed, and the night wore on. I went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. My thoughts raced, wondering where Emily was, what she was doing, and if she was okay. Was her mother-in-law really that sick, or was there more to the story? I didn't know, and the uncertainty gnawed at me. But more than that, I wondered why she hadn't included me in her life anymore. Why was I being left behind? As I lay, there in the dark, a feeling of loneliness washed over me. I had spent so many Christmases with her, so many years making memories, and now I was alone. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that something had changed, something I wasn't ready to face, and that thought kept me awake, long into the night. The days following Christmas were filled with a strange mix of numbness and quiet resentment. The house, though adorned with festive decorations, felt foreign to me now. It was as if the warmth had been drained from it. I spent my time in the kitchen, making meals I didn't want to eat, cleaning rooms that no longer felt like home, and scrolling through the same empty social media feed, hoping for some sign from Emily. But there was nothing. No phone calls, no texts. She had completely disappeared from my life. I tried not to let my worry consume me, but the silence was unbearable. Each unanswered text, each unanswered call, weighed heavier on my heart. I couldn't understand why Emily, my daughter, whom I had raised with so much love and care, was treating me like this. Was I no longer important to her? Was her mother-in-law's sickness the only thing that mattered? The questions flooded my mind, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. On the 5th day after Christmas, I decided to take action. I couldn't just sit around any longer, wondering where she was or what was going on. Something inside me urged me to visit her, to see if I could find some answers. Maybe she was going through something and didn't know how to talk about it. After all, life had a way of complicating things. Maybe I was being too hard on her. I grabbed my coat and drove to her house. The journey there felt endless, each mile filled with anticipation and a gnawing uncertainty. What would I find when I got there? Would Emily be home? Would she explain why she had abandoned me during the holidays? My heart pounded with every passing streetlight as I approached her neighborhood. When I arrived, her house was eerily quiet. The lights were off, and there were no signs of life. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. I tried the handle, but the door was locked. It wasn't like Emily to leave her house like this. She always made sure to check in, especially when things weren't right. But now, there was nothing. I stood there for a few moments, unsure of what to do next. The cold wind nipped at my cheeks, and I pulled my coat tighter around my body. A strange sense of dread settled over me. I decided to walk around the back of the house, hoping to find some clue as to where she might be. As I rounded the corner, I saw her car parked in the driveway. It was a small relief, but it didn't ease the tightness in my chest. I stood there, staring at the car, and then I noticed something. Something that made my blood run cold. There, sitting on the passenger seat of the car, was a tote bag with the logo of a resort printed on it. A resort I recognized well. It was the same one Emily and David had mentioned years ago when they had talked about their dream vacation. The same place they had always wanted to visit. The sight of that bag was the last thing I expected. My mind raced as I tried to piece it together. If Emily had left for her mother-in-law, why was she carrying a resort bag? Was she going on vacation? The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt a surge of anger mixed with betrayal. Emily had lied to me. She wasn't taking care of her mother-in-law. She had gone away with David on a vacation while I was left here alone. I pulled out my phone, heart pounding, and quickly scrolled through her social media profiles. I had resisted doing this for days, not wanting to invade her privacy, but now I needed answers. And the answers came quickly. There, on her Instagram feed, was a picture of Emily and David, their faces glowing with happiness, standing together on a beach with the sun setting behind them. The caption read, "Taking some much-needed time to relax. Hawaii vacation time. Beach vibes." My stomach dropped as I stared at the photo. Emily, my daughter, was in Hawaii with her husband. She had lied to me about where she was, about why she left, and now here she was, enjoying the holidays on a tropical island. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had felt before. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, for believing her stories about being with her sick mother-in-law. How could she have done this to me? How could she leave me behind, alone, while she went off to enjoy her life? I felt a rush of emotions. Anger, confusion, and pain all swirled together in a chaotic whirlwind. How could she do this to me? To her own mother? The tears I had been holding back for days finally spilled over. I stood there, feeling the weight of my emotions, trying to make sense of it all. Was this the woman I had raised? Was this the daughter who once relied on me for everything? But even in my hurt, I couldn't stop thinking about the text I had just received, the one that had sent me on this search, the one that revealed the truth. The message read, "I saw Emily and David on the beach in Hawaii. They're not coming back anytime soon." The words echoed in my mind as I stood in the cold, staring at the empty house. The pain of betrayal was sharp and overwhelming. But there was still more to uncover, and I wasn't going to stop until I had answers. The discovery that Emily had lied to me, that she had chosen to spend Christmas in Hawaii with her husband while I sat alone, filled me with a kind of anger I'd never felt before. The initial shock had given way to a quiet but relentless ache deep in my chest. I had tried to be understanding, to believe that her absence was due to her caring for her sick mother-in-law, but the truth was far more painful than I could have imagined. She had chosen not only to deceive me, but to abandon me during one of the most important times of the year. Christmas, a holiday we had always shared, had become a bitter reminder of how far apart we had grown. I tried to push away the feelings of anger that consumed me, but it wasn't easy. Every little thing reminded me of how Emily had left me behind. The phone calls that went unanswered, the messages she never responded to, and the photo of her and David smiling on the beach, it all twisted the knife deeper. It wasn't just the vacation that hurt. It was the lie, the dishonesty, and the complete disregard for how I might feel. All those years I had been there for her, supporting her through thick and thin. And now, when I needed her most, she was gone. She wasn't just absent, she was actively avoiding me. I had always known Emily as a kind, considerate person, someone who would never intentionally hurt me. And yet, here I was, feeling like I had been thrown aside, my love and care discarded for something as shallow as a vacation. I knew she loved me, but love wasn't enough if it didn't come with respect, honesty, and communication. The silence between us spoke volumes, and I felt like I was being punished for something I couldn't even understand. I kept replaying the conversations we'd had before she left. She had sounded so certain, so firm in her decision to care for her mother-in-law. She had assured me that it would only be for a short while, that she'd be back after a few days. But now, as I sat alone in my empty house, those words felt like empty promises. How could she have left me without any explanation? Why didn't she tell me the truth? Was it really too hard for her to say that she needed a break, that she wanted to go away with David? The anger inside me wasn't just directed at Emily. It was also directed at myself. Why hadn't I seen it sooner? Why hadn't I noticed the signs? Was I so blinded by my love for her that I couldn't see the distance growing between us? The questions gnawed at me, relentless and unforgiving. I couldn't understand why she had done this to me. There was no explanation that would make it right. No excuse that would take away the hurt. I felt betrayed in the deepest sense. I had been her mother for all these years, and now, when I needed her most, she had chosen to ignore me. It wasn't just about the vacation. It was about the lack of care, the lack of communication, the lack of respect. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no word from Emily. My calls went unanswered, and my texts were left unread. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the daughter I had raised, the one who would have never left me alone like this. What had changed? Had I done something to make her resent me? Had I failed her in some way? The self-doubt crept in, but I quickly pushed it away. This wasn't my fault. I hadn't done anything wrong. It was Emily who had made the choice to shut me out, to lie to me, to leave me behind. I spent my days lost in thought, replaying the moments we'd shared in the past, the Christmases we had celebrated, the laughter we had shared. It all seemed so distant now, so unreal. How could everything have changed so quickly? How could she have gone from being my closest companion to a stranger, someone who had chosen to abandon me without a second thought? The pain of betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical. My chest ached every time I thought about what Emily had done. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss, as if a part of me had been taken away. The holidays, once a time of joy and togetherness, had become a reminder of the emptiness that now filled my life. I missed her more than I could express. The silence between us felt like an unbearable weight, one that I wasn't sure I could carry. As the weeks passed, I tried to stay busy, to distract myself from the growing sadness that consumed me. But no matter how many distractions I sought, nothing seemed to fill the void that Emily had left behind. The house, once filled with her laughter, felt cold and lonely. Even the memories of past Christmases couldn't bring me comfort. I had been abandoned, and the wound was fresh, raw, and deep. The pain of betrayal wasn't something I could easily let go of. It lingered, festering like an open wound, and I didn't know how to heal it. I wasn't sure what would fix things between Emily and me. How could I forgive her for something that hurt so deeply? How could I trust her again after everything she had done? But even as the pain consumed me, a small part of me still held on to hope. Maybe, just maybe, Emily would come to her senses. Maybe she would realize what she had done and come back, asking for forgiveness. Until then, all I could do was wait and try to find a way to heal the wounds she had left in my heart. The days dragged on after the discovery of Emily's secret vacation, and the weight of the betrayal continued to haunt me. The sadness was overwhelming, but something more unsettling had begun to grow inside me. Doubt. I had been trying to make sense of everything, trying to understand why Emily had chosen to lie to me. The pain was sharp, but the confusion was even worse. The emotional wreckage she had left in her wake was now compounded by a question I couldn't shake. Why? Why had she chosen to lie instead of telling me the truth? Why hadn't she been honest with me from the beginning? I spent countless hours replaying everything in my mind. I thought back to all the moments we had shared, the holidays, the birthdays, the family dinners. How had I failed to see the signs? How had I not noticed her growing distance before she left? I had always known Emily to be a kind and loving daughter. She had always been the type to put family first, especially during difficult times. So why would she choose this moment to pull away from me? What had changed in her life that made her so willing to deceive me? Then, one evening, as I sat scrolling through social media, I saw it. A post that sent a cold shiver through me. Emily and David's vacation wasn't just a one-off. It was an entire escape. It wasn't just a photo of a happy couple on the beach. It was a collection of photos, a documented journey of their time together in Hawaii. They had visited tourist spots, explored the island, dined at expensive restaurants, and shared photos of their adventures with captions that made it seem like they were having the time of their lives. Every picture painted a picture of contentment and joy, but none of it was real. None of it was shared with me. The more I scrolled, the more my anger grew. But it wasn't just anger. It was a sick feeling of betrayal. There was a level of transparency in the photos, an undeniable truth in their carefree smiles, and it made me feel even more isolated. I had spent Christmas alone, believing that Emily was caring for her sick mother-in-law, but she had been hundreds of miles away, choosing to live a completely different life, far from the reality of the family she had left behind. As I stared at the photos, I realized that the life they were portraying online was the one I had imagined in my dreams, one where we spent holidays together, laughing, sharing, creating memories. Instead, they were living that dream without me, and that hurt more than anything. The worst part was the realization that all this time I had been waiting. I had waited for her to return, waited for an apology, waited for an explanation. But Emily hadn't come back, not just physically, but emotionally. I was left to piece together the fragments of a relationship that once seemed unbreakable. The lies, the absence, the coldness. It all hit me like a wrecking ball. What was I supposed to do with this new reality? The most gut-wrenching part of it all was the realization that Emily had knowingly chosen her husband over me, not once, but repeatedly. She had lied about her whereabouts, about her intentions, and about her feelings toward me. There was no denying it now. She had made a conscious decision to turn her back on me and my needs, all while making it seem like she was the dutiful daughter, the one who had to care for her mother-in-law. That was the lie that cut deepest. The mask of selflessness she wore while she was really indulging in a life without any regard for the person who had been there for her since day one. But as I sat there, trying to process all the emotions that were flooding through me, something shifted. I thought about all the years of love I had given her. I thought about the times I had stayed up late helping her with homework, the moments I had wiped her tears when she felt lost, The times I had dropped everything to be there for her when life got tough. In all those years, I never once questioned whether she would be there for me when I needed her. I had always assumed she would be. But now, the truth was undeniable. She wasn't the same person I had known. Somewhere along the way, Emily had changed. Maybe it was the pressure of life, the demands of her marriage. Or maybe it was something deeper within her that I couldn't see. Whatever the reason, the Emily I knew seemed to be slipping away, replaced by someone who had made choices that hurt everyone around her, and I was left wondering where I had gone wrong, where I had failed her. I thought about reaching out to her, about calling her to demand an explanation, but I stopped myself. What was the point? The hurt I felt was already too much. The lies had already been told, and I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. I couldn't just sweep it under the rug, pretending everything was fine. Trust was broken, and it wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. But as much as the anger burned, there was another part of me that still wanted to understand, still wanted to give her a chance to explain. Deep down, I knew that my feelings weren't all about anger. They were also about loss. The person who had been my daughter, the person who had filled my heart with love and pride, seemed so distant now, and it broke my heart to realize that the distance between us wasn't just physical. It was emotional, too. Would we ever be able to bridge that gap? Would we ever be able to rebuild what had been lost? I didn't know the answer, but one thing was clear. Emily had made her choices. And now I had to decide how to move forward. Whether I could forgive her, or whether the distance between us had grown too wide to mend. The truth had been laid bare, and I was left with the painful reality of what had happened. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't continue living in the shadow of this betrayal. It was time for me to face the truth and find a way to heal. Whether that meant letting go or trying to rebuild what was broken. It had been weeks since I had discovered the painful truth about Emily. My heart had been torn apart, and the silence between us had grown so loud that I could hardly bear it anymore. Every day I spent in the empty house felt like an eternity, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I had been waiting for some kind of explanation, for Emily to come to her senses and realize the hurt she had caused. But as the days dragged on, the silence only grew. My calls went unanswered. My texts were ignored. It felt as though she had completely shut me out of her life, leaving me to navigate this storm of emotions on my own. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. I had become so accustomed to the silence that I nearly ignored it, convinced it was just another spam message or an email I didn't need to read. But then, I saw it. A message from Emily. The words on the screen were simple, but they sent a chill through me. "Mom, I need to explain. Please pick up when you can." My heart skipped a beat. Was this the moment I had been waiting for? Was this the conversation that would finally bring us back together? I hesitated. The anger and sadness that had been festering for so long made it hard for me to even think about speaking to her. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, to let her suffer the consequences of her actions. But another part of me, an old, familiar part of me that still loved her more than anything, knew that I couldn't just let it go. She was my daughter. Despite everything, I still cared deeply for her, and I needed to hear her side of the story, to understand what had led her to make these choices. I dialed her number, and after a few rings, she picked up. Her voice sounded shaky, hesitant, as if she wasn't sure what to say, or how to begin the conversation she knew would be difficult. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you. I should have told you everything, and I didn't. I don't know why I lied to you, but I regret it every day," she said, her voice trembling. The words hit me hard, harder than I had anticipated. The part of me that wanted to lash out, to accuse her of everything she had done, had to fight to stay silent. She was finally speaking, finally acknowledging what she had done. But even with her apology, the hurt was still raw. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I held it in check, not wanting to make the conversation more painful than it already was. "I don't understand, Emily," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth? Why did you leave me behind without a word, and why did you make me believe all those lies? You said you were taking care of your mother-in-law, but you were in Hawaii. How could you do that to me?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Emily breathing, struggling to find the right words. "I didn't want to disappoint you," she said softly. "I didn't want you to think I was abandoning you, and I didn't want to admit that I needed a break. David and we were going through a lot, and I thought that getting away would help. But I was wrong. I should have been honest with you from the start." Her words were sincere, and yet I couldn't help but feel the sting of betrayal. She had been going through a difficult time, yes, but that didn't excuse the lies. I had always been there for her, through every challenge, every tear, every triumph. And now, when I needed her most, she had chosen to leave me behind. The pain of that reality was still fresh, still overwhelming, and I wasn't sure how to process it. "I just don't understand why you couldn't trust me, Emily," I said, my voice breaking. "I would have supported you no matter what. You didn't have to lie to me. You didn't have to leave me in the dark." "I know, Mom. I know," she said, her voice full of regret. "And I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was scared. Scared of how you would react, scared of what you might think. And I made the wrong choice. I should have just told you the truth. You deserved that." I was silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. The pain didn't go away, but there was something about hearing her admit her mistakes that made it feel a little less unbearable. Emily was finally taking responsibility for her actions, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. "I don't know if I can just forget what you've done, Emily," I said, my voice softening. "The hurt is still there. But I want to try. I want to understand why this happened. I want to heal, but it's going to take time. I need you to be honest with me from now on. No more lies. No more secrets. I promise, Mom," she said, her voice filled with determination. "No more lies. I'll make things right. I swear." Her words were a small comfort, but they were enough to begin the process of healing. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and I knew it wouldn't happen overnight. Trust had been broken, and rebuilding it would take time. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like there was a chance, like we could work through this together. As I hung up the phone, a mixture of emotions swirled inside me. The anger, the hurt, the confusion, they were still there, lingering, in the background. But there was something else too, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that, despite the damage that had been done, we could find our way back to each other. It wouldn't be easy, but at least we had a chance. And that for now was enough. The weeks after my conversation with Emily felt like a delicate balance between healing and uncertainty. I had spent so many sleepless nights wondering if we could ever mend the distance between us. The pain of betrayal still lingered, and I wasn't sure if time would be enough to erase it. But as Emily promised, she was doing everything she could to make things right. She began texting me every day, calling when she could, and making plans to visit. Each gesture, small as it was, showed me that she was trying. But trying wasn't always enough to erase the hurt. I had to face the reality that trust, once broken, wasn't so easily repaired. Despite my desire to keep my guard up, part of me still wanted to believe in her, in us. She was my daughter, and the love I felt for her hadn't disappeared. What hurt was how easily she had disregarded that love, how quickly she had made the decision to lie and shut me out. I couldn't forget that, but I also couldn't ignore the fact that she was genuinely remorseful, trying her hardest to make amends. I had to decide whether I could allow her back into my life fully, or if the wounds were too deep to heal. One afternoon, Emily called to tell me she was coming over. She wanted to talk face to face, to make things right in person. As I prepared for her visit, I felt a knot of tension in my stomach. I wasn't sure what to expect, whether the conversation would bring us closer, or if it would open old wounds. Still, I couldn't avoid the inevitable. We needed to have this conversation, even if it was uncomfortable. When she arrived, I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She hadn't just been through a lot with her marriage and the fallout of our strained relationship. The weight of everything had begun to show. She looked older somehow, burdened by regret, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her. It wasn't just the vacation or the lies that hurt me. It was the fact that I saw my daughter, the woman I had raised, struggling with her choices. She wasn't perfect. She had made mistakes. And perhaps, like everyone, she needed forgiveness. We sat down in the living room, the space that used to be filled with laughter and family gatherings. Now, it felt almost foreign, like a room full of memories I wasn't sure how to handle. "Mom, I know I've hurt you," Emily began, her voice small and tentative. "And I can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know that I regret every decision that led to this. I should have been honest with you from the start. I shouldn't have lied to you. I should have come home when I said I would. I was selfish, and I took you for granted." Her words were like a balm to a wound I hadn't realized was still so raw. It wasn't just the apology itself. It was the sincerity in her voice. I could feel the weight of her regret, and while that didn't erase the pain, it did begin to chip away at the bitterness that had built up inside me. I had spent weeks wallowing in my own hurt, and now, as she sat there before me, all I could do was listen. Listen to the daughter who had made a mistake, but was asking for a chance to make it right. "I don't know if I can forget what happened, Emily," I said softly. The words were harder to say than I expected, but they were the truth. The pain of being lied to, of being left behind during a time I needed you, is still very fresh. I can't just push that aside, but that doesn't mean I want to give up on us. I want to heal, but I don't know how to start. Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand, Mom. I know I have to earn your trust back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our relationship. You've always been there for me, and I took that for granted. I'm sorry." The words felt heavy, like a confession that had been buried deep inside her for too long. I could see the depth of her regret, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel something other than anger or pain. I allowed myself to feel compassion. Maybe it was because I remembered the little girl she used to be, the one who always needed her mom, the one who leaned on me during the hardest times. That girl hadn't gone away. She was still there, hidden beneath the walls Emily had built around herself. We talked for hours that afternoon, the conversation flowing between tears, apologies, and shared memories. Slowly, I felt the walls between us begin to crack, the distance between us narrowing, even if just a little. It wasn't easy, and I knew it wouldn't be. But in that moment, I realized something important. Healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about understanding, accepting the mistakes, and learning to move forward together. "I'm not asking for everything to go back to normal, Emily," I said finally, my voice filled with quiet resolution. "I just need time. Time to heal. Time to trust you again. I can't promise that it will be easy, but I do want to try. I want to rebuild what we've lost." Emily reached across the table, her hand trembling as she took mine. "I'm willing to wait for you, Mom. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I've changed. I've learned from this, and I'll never take you for granted again." The simple act of her hand in mine felt like a small but significant step forward. We weren't fully healed yet, but I finally felt a flicker of hope. It was a start. Emily left that evening, I watched her walk away with a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead would be challenging, and the scars of the past would take time to fade. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like we had the possibility of a future together. One where honesty, forgiveness, and love could lead us back to where we once were. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough.